On today's episode of the Unveil Podcast, Brace Harris and I discuss the mind and how to make your mind an ally as opposed to an enemy. We walk you through all the ways we normally think about our thoughts and how we identify with our thoughts and what we make them mean. Then we differentiate the difference between the thoughts and the mind. We talk about how you really can't identify with the things that you think, and we discuss where thoughts come from rather than just what we think they mean. And then we walk you through the process that we take our clients through, that process of pausing in the moments where we feel like our thoughts are about to take over, and using that as a signal from our being that there is something that we need to pay attention to. And then we show you how to research that moment to discover more about who you really are, and then begin to redefine your relationship with your mind. Enjoy the episode, and we hope it helps you think a little bit differently about your mind and the way that it thinks.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Brace Harris.
My name is Victoria Fenton.
And we are
Unveil.
Welcome. Ladies and germs, we are still on two different continents, bringing it to you, keeping the good faith, working hard. We've got an interesting topic for everyone today. But before we get into that, Victoria, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm all right. We've just had a big, long discussion about how separate I feel from my Unveil partner. Just difficult. It's not like, as we were saying, it's not like I've got a life here that I can just like pick up and do a bit of and then, come back to America. It's like I didn't have a life here because I didn't live here before I left. For those of you who don't know, I was in South Africa for about 18 months before I left for America. So I wasn't here. I don't know, it's very odd being back at the wrong time zones and doing the wonky days again.
Yes. Well, what time is it in the UK right now?
7:04 p.m.
7:04 p.m. and it is 5 after 11 here, or 11:04. Ta-da.
Surprisingly, because there's no minutes that get lost in the time zone. But yeah, so Brace and I are talking fairly frequently, but we were very used to kind of spending all day together when we were in LA, just making stuff and doing stuff together. So it's a little bit of a solo slog for me at the moment, creating crazy content. But if you are on this podcast and
yes,
through a podcast player of any description, welcome to Podbean, people. So yes. This will be the first official podcast we are releasing through our new podcast server. I don't know what we should call it, like host us. There's so much more functionality in this. We'll embed players in many more different places. If you're listening to us and you've had to find us from anywhere, we apologize if we migrated away from where you used to find us. I've tried to make everything work, but if it hasn't worked, welcome back. And apologies if that was an effort. But we now have a dedicated podcast page at podcasts.unveilenterprises.com. Sorry, no, podcast in the singular, because we only have one and I don't have the energy to create another one, Brace. So yeah, onepodcast.unveilenterprises.com. And that's where you can find all of our historic content, all of the write-ups. We're working hard to get all the transcripts on there. So everything should be in one place. But if you're listening to us on iHeartRadio, where I've now launched our podcast, hi, we've not been here before. That's literally never going to happen, Brace. I'm just warning you. But yeah, I'm on Amazon now. Amazon as well. All the things.
Amazon, love it. Brilliant.
Amazon Alexa. Yes, you could go, Alexa, play the Unveil podcast.
Boom.
I really hope that I've just turned on a load of Alexas around the country and on. How are you, Brace? How's life? How's LA?
I'm doing well. LA is a little bit cooler. We were warming up and then it cooled off a little bit. We had some rain, which we desperately needed. Yes. So that was most of yesterday. Today we're warming up just a tad, but I am doing well. Family's well. Wife is well. Everybody's well. So we're doing good. I'm excited about today's topic. Would you like to give us a quick synopsis of what we will be discussing for the day?
Yeah, so we are going to discuss how to make your mind an ally with the loose subtitle of beat anxiety and overthinking. Basically, because it's what most people's minds tend to preoccupy themselves doing. And what we felt we'd do is we'd open our discussion by talking about the typical relationship to your mind and your thoughts and what goes on in the mental chatter and the self narrative and all that stuff. And then move on to a real unveiled typical discussion about what thoughts really are, what really is the mind, what does the mind consist of, how is the mind separate from the body, is it separate from the body, that kind of stuff. Let's map the landscape of mind, and mind as it relates to body as well. And then we're going to actually give you some useful tips as to how to use what we've shared with you to navigate through making your mind an ally. So if you have a tricky relationship with the way your brain goes, and you know those things that we say about ourselves, like, oh, I'm always so negative, or I'm always anxious, or I've got an anxious personality, or whatever it is, we will show you how to relate to that in a different way. And we're not going to promise that every thought that you're going to have is going to shift after an hour of listening to us, or however long this podcast goes. But this is not always about active change. And we're very much at Unveil, we are not about forcing change. We're not about shifting, that unhealthy gear shift that doesn't feel very comfortable. That's not what Americans don't know this, that all their cars are automatics, but I'm learning this now. I'm back in the UK driving a manual, that unhealthy gear shift. It's not about that. For us, we're very much about how shifting a relationship to something, or even just watching it, can shift it in and of itself. So that's kind of the roadmap that we will, of course, deviate from because we're Unveil.
Yes. All right. Excellent. So as we're moving into the topic, how do we traditionally approach this? Well, like, basically, what does society teach us? What more than likely our parents taught us, and their parents, and like the common understanding of relationship to the mind, to thoughts, to how we move through things that come up within us that seem to either make us take a big pause or roadblock us from maybe achieving something that we might want.
Well, I think it's really funny when you think about your mind, because your mind is often the thing that you think you are, number one. So it's like the thing that you identify with, your thoughts and the things that go through your brain. But it's often the thing that beats you up the most. So it criticizes you a lot. And so as a result, we kind of do this third thing, which is like have an opinion about our own thoughts. It's like that sandwich of stuff, all of which means that if that's the bit that you identify you as being, why are you then beating yourself up and then judging the fact that you've beat yourself up? It's insane, but this is what we do. So why don't you, like, because you were talking to me about this before, it's like map the landscape of what people normally do with their brains and their thoughts.
Well, from what I do is, if I have something come up, for me, whether it be, if you've listened, I've always struggled with anger coming up, or stress. People have anxiety, overthinking. Again, it's something that we try to run away from. We're told, or I was told young, that is bad. That's bad. And you don't need to do that. And that's not okay. And having big emotion is not okay. And stressing out, you keep everything to yourself. You push it down, you push through. And we try to run away from those feelings that manifest physically in our body, and maybe not the most comfortable way. They're almost always extremely powerful feelings.
And I just want to interrupt you here, because what I actually love about what you've done
taken thought and you've gone to feeling. Because this is what you do, which is amazing.
Yes, it is what I do. Yeah.
The second part, because we will tie minds and thoughts together, but you're absolutely correct. It's like those big feelings generate thoughts. And so what we often do is we hear the thoughts and we will try and push the thoughts away as much, if not more so than the feelings, because we have a judgment as a society about what different ways of thinking means. So if you are an overthinker, you will have been taught by society that overthinking and anxiety and projecting into the future is quote unquote wrong. It's not okay. Like, you're going to make yourself anxious, or you're going to, what can you do to control the future? Why do you even need to think of it? There's all of these judgments that come from the thought train, which is anxiety or overthinking, or, projecting into the future with fear. And it always, and you absolutely said it, it's like we label the thoughts as something, because we need, human design, oh my god, that's Freudian. Human beings are labeling machines where we need to give something a description in order to codify it, in order to know how to reference it again in the future. So we have to label stuff. But we've said it before, within the psychiatric community, the labels go on and on and on and on and on. And it's like, a few of them might be barely accurate, but quite a lot of them are kind of placeholders for complex psychological phenomena that we don't yet understand, but here have a label, so we can talk about it and then maybe medicate it, and then maybe be really negative about it because you've got a diagnosis that's in the DSM.
Yes. And then the person who gets labeled tends to accept that label. This is what I am. This is who I am. And that's not true.
Right. And that comes back to mind as identity. It's who we think we are. So I have lost count of the amount of emails or comments that I've got from people, which is like, oh, I'm an anxious person. You're what now? Like, that's literally not a truism. That's just you tying the way your brain dominates the thought processes, anxiety, and tying it to some level of identity, which it isn't. It's, you have a brain which defaults to repetitive thoughts projecting into the future. That's what anxiety actually is. But we tend to create this kind of disconnect from our own brains, because as soon as we identify, we then judge. It's like we judge ourselves as much as we judge the next person. And we're like, and almost we judge ourselves harsher. So we have real compassion for people who have mental health problems.
Yes.
But you can't be anxious. Like, oh my God, you shouldn't be anxious.
And then if you are, not only do you have that label, but then you have guilt, shame, like most often in a toxic way, getting attached to that label thought process, which only compounds how intense everything becomes. Because then you're like, why can't I be different? Why can't I be different? Why am I this way? I should be that,
Especially if you're looking for a reason and a rationalization behind the way your brain dominantly thinks. So a lot of the times you'll get people who be like, oh, well, what do I have to be anxious about? It's like, that's not really the point. The point is that your brain is manifesting anxiety. But because we are going, I am anxious, it's a me and I, and it's an ism about who I am being in this moment. It's like there has to be a reason. So your brain then searches for a reason, and you almost create more anxiety and more shame, more guilt if you can't find a reason. And this goes back to the whole conversation we had about trauma, where there's like no hierarchy to trauma. It's because this is not about somebody's metrics. It's about how you're feeling and the truth of that being an eminent property of what's coming through your body or your mind.
And we're taught from a very young age, and it's kind of going back to what I was referring to earlier, that certain labels are unacceptable, certain feelings are unacceptable, and they are considered the enemy. It's like, you got to stay away from the enemy. That's the bad guy. And if you're labeling that feeling as a bad guy and you're feeling that feeling, what does that make you? That makes you the bad guy.
And same for thoughts. So again, we're talking about
I always go to the feeling, but
sorry, I'm just keeping our listeners on track.
No, I love it.
And the reality is, if you're a long time Unveil listener, you will know that Brace is Mr. Feelings. Like, he he almost can't think thoughts. He has to feel, and we will literally be having conversations and I'll go, hang on a second, it's a sensation, so let me find the words. But that's really indicative of where we're going in this podcast. It's really, really prominent in terms of understanding what your thoughts actually are to begin with. But just for people who are kind of not in the feelings world, because a lot of people don't feel like they are in the feelings world because they are so in the mind world, and they're so in this kind of like cosmic machinations that they almost are so here that they're not, sorry, here as in the head, that they're not in the body and they're not having the sensations and the feeling.
I will have so many clients that I'll be like, what's coming up, what's the feeling, what's the sensation, just notice, and they go up into the mind and they start thinking about it and analyzing, as opposed to feeling whatever is coming up. They like to move into those.
Yeah, and I just want to stress this. We're very it's quite challenging to be coaches having a very generic podcast and talking about kind of the way we work with clients, because it's not always appropriate to then dive that client directly into their body. And we're not saying if you're a head person, that's a quote unquote problem. We're saying it's a thing, and it's just something to be aware of. And there are lots of people who just struggle getting into the body because they weren't taught, and it's not a problem. But there are also people who being in the body has historically been, and therefore still carries a resemblance of being unsafe. And so being in the mind is a safety mechanism.
Safe place, yeah.
And often it's these people who have these anxiety things or depression things or overthinking things, is because their mind isn't actually where they should be spending their time. But because they are so much there, because the body is not a safe place to be and sensations are not a safe thing to feel, they become kind of psychologically disturbed. And actually the problem, again, quote unquote, I'm doing so many air quotes today, but the problem is the disconnection from the physiology. And that can be so true for so many mental health things. And there's other elements as well in terms of disconnection from society and networks. It's a kind of social phenomenon, because of where we'll come on to in the sort of second part of this. But I think the key part for the beginning bit is what you were saying. It's like that minimization it's almost like the default. And we are trained as kids that our thoughts aren't necessarily valuable, because we've got adults who are the people who we outsource our thinking to. And it's like, and we've all had an adult who said, particularly like, because we do the ticky box of schooling and all that kind of stuff. It's like, how many times did an adult say to you, oh, don't stress about this exam, it doesn't matter over the long term? Okay, so you're denying my stress and anxiety, that feeling and that thought process and that concern about my future, just because it's an exam that you know in your adulthood, because you've gone through all of them, that these ones aren't very important. But right now, when I'm sitting I don't know what you would call them, but we call them SATs, it's like, no, I need to be anxious right now. It's like, and saying nobody will look at those when you're applying for university doesn't make any difference when you're a kid sitting your SATs. It's like, I mean, God bless the adults, they do it to try and make the kids feel better, but it's basically, it begins the denial of your kind of anxiety from a very early age. And, as soon as you identify with something that you don't want to identify with, you start to run away from yourself.
And we actually want to do the opposite of that. That's kind of where we want to head, is encourage you to run toward yourself, run toward the things that you have been told a million billion times you need to run away from. We want to change that narrative, which is one of the main things that we do at Unveil, is we go toward the thing that seems so scary. And what we get to redefine is your relationship to said, heavy air quotes again, problem.
And gently. So this isn't, we turn you around and force you to run in the opposite direction. Like, we're not quite like that. We're not like the gym teachers at school who are like, just do laps. No, there is a reason why your brain and body have made the decisions that they have made, whether that's shame or guilt, or they've layered in more anxiety, or you've defaulted to conscious thinking rather than being in the physiology. And the goal isn't just do the opposites for doing the opposite's sake. What Brace is saying is that the journey that Unveil clients go on is moving into the understanding of the why they're being made the decision in the first place, to then pull them around to a different element of existence effectively.
So what would be the first step in moving toward the quote unquote problem?
I think the biggest thing with mind stuff is to understand why you shouldn't identify with the thoughts that you're having. And it comes down to what you were saying about sensations and feelings and stuff like that, because these ways of mental domination, whether it's anxiety or depression or overthinking or obsessive compulsive, whatever it is, they are emergent properties from the physiology. And there are still people who will argue about this. But it's now really well borne out by science that the thought track, not necessarily the specifics, which is where people get caught up, but the thought track is given to you by the signals of your physiology. And that will include hormones, signals of triggers, and what dominant nervous system pattern you're in at that moment in time. So whether that is more anxious, more hyper alert, more hyper aware. So for those who are kind of in this world, the sympathetic kind of energy, that overdrive, or whether you are more docile and more kind of reserved and almost withdrawn, you know, the parasympathetic side of stuff. And there's way more complications than just those two, but you know, you can think about it like that. And like almost where your thoughts spend a lot of their time is as the end result of a nervous system impulse based on a set of factors, including internal physiology, environmental interpretation, and past experience. So as soon as you can go, oh, so this thought that I'm thinking is like the end extension of something that's happening way, way, way deeper that includes, and let's just go back and really delineate what I've just said, internal signals. So everything that's going on in your body right now. Are you slept enough? Have you eaten enough? Are you dehydrated? You know, did you have an argument? Where are you at in your hormonal cycle for women? All of that kind of stuff. That plus the external signals. So everything that's coming in from the outside world, like what can you see, smell, taste, hear? Does it seem safe? And that safety is determined by past experience. So it's that kind of recognition pattern of what am I seeing, what am I doing, what am I thinking, is all, you know, based on how safe do I feel. And safety isn't a constant. Safety is a perception based on your past experience and what is in this current environment, which is similar to or different from said past experience. So
yes,
when you're having a thought process, it is an emergent process of some really complicated stuff that's happening way beneath the conscious mind.
Yeah, you're always seeing through a lens that you have created using past experiences. It's not the same as anybody else's lens because everybody's lens is unique to them.
Right.
So everything that we experience as human beings is very much relative.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
I mean,
Well, and that's
so first give yourself a break, guys. Give yourself a break.
Exactly. But this is a huge part of what we spend our time doing at Unveil, and the reason behind the name of the company. We spend the majority of our time not exploring the thing, but the lens. Like most of our time is helping clients understand their lens and therefore how they are interpreting the outside world and their inner reality. Because that lens
Beautiful.
is,
yeah,
it's not a pane of glass. It's concave and convex in certain areas and all that kind of stuff. And you've got to understand the way the light is refracting to grasp why your being in this seemingly benign situation is freaking out. And if you're an anxious person, stop the guilt. Try and work out how your lens might be concave and convex and weird in this specific setting. What are the ingredients of where you are which are making your reality seem like you need to be scared? And that is like maybe just as simple as, have you eaten enough? Have you slept enough? Are you dehydrated? Shall we potentially just take a break from a computer screen? All really valuable, but also the historic stuff, the historic, like, where is your set point of stress? Because a lot of times people are looking for some major kind of trauma blow up kind of thing, and it doesn't exist in their past. And it's like, yeah, okay, so where's your set point of how safe you think this environment is? Because if you think that the world itself is inherently scary, you're going to default to needing to have an anxious mind. And that's what I really would love people to see. It's like, you have anxiety as a part of your mental makeup because your body believes it needs it. Your body is sending stress signals, physiological signals, the clammy hands, the heart rate that's racing, and the thought processes, because your body thinks it's an appropriate response to the set of circumstances in which it finds itself. So this isn't, oh God, anxiety bad, let's medicate it. It's, why does your being believe that anxiety is unnecessary in this circumstance or as a universal approach to life?
Yeah. So you get to explore that. Like, there is an awareness. If you feel the physical things, and this is something we were talking about earlier, and I don't know if it applies to something later, but the mind extends. It's not just your mind is your brain and your thought processes. Your mind is basically your whole being. It extends down into the nervous system. The nervous system isn't just this system of your body that moves your muscles and allows you to feel heat, or if you're near a fire. It is literally an extension of your brain. It's attached to the brain. It continues on and keeps going all the way down to your little pinky toe. So if you're feeling the sensations, it's literally your mind. And is it fair to say when we say mind from now on, we're talking about the entire physiological being?
Yeah. So, and
as we move forward,
the distinction we made earlier is the difference between mind, as in the emergent property of the nervous system, and the thing that then feeds back signals to said nervous system, and thoughts, which are the things. And those two are not the same thing. And the more you identify with your thoughts, the less you are conscious that the mind is a greater organism
and more powerful.
Yeah, that it's not just the organ, the brain, it's mind. And we could get into semantics about consciousness and being, and what is semantics? Is it just body, or is it the whole be? It doesn't matter. Whatever language word you use to feel that you have some connection, and that your thoughts reside within the conscious access you have to a mind which is connected to so much more that you are completely unconscious of, you're starting to get a grip of how much weight you can place on the thoughts that you experience. And therefore, when you say you're an anxious person, you're basically taking the top 10% of the conscious thoughts that you can actively hear in your cognition and extending that to be 100% of you, when actually what is probably truer is your being feels stress in the setting that you are currently existing, and therefore is giving you every single signal it can possibly give you for you to get out of that situation. And what you get to do as a conscious human is go, okay, is that an appropriate response given what I know about the specifics that I'm seeing in front of me? If there's somebody with a gun, probably. This is not legitimate anxiety. Versus, are you just in the office? Are you just doing your daily job? Are you sitting across from your kids at dinner? Therefore, is there more in this for you to actually go underneath and say, okay, thank you for sending me the signal of anxiety, dear body, because that's a clue that something about this doesn't feel safe. And then you get to work out what that is.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It's really, instead of, we've used the example of anxiety. When that sensation comes up for me, anger, stress will manifest physically. I'll feel it. And that's an opportunity for me to, when I feel those, and guys, it takes a minute, especially if you're not used to it. It takes a minute to get used to catching yourself. When you feel those sensations, catching yourself in the moment, because we tend to just get carried away with those sensations. And we just move into that. It's what we've done. It's a knee-jerk reaction to what we've done all our life. So be patient as you move through this and just become aware. It's the thing that we always go back to, is once you start to become aware, then you can look at anxiety, anger, stress, whatever is coming up, overthinking, coming up for you, and you can see it more instead of that enemy, that thing we're running away from, to it's your ally, because it is your mind, and mind in the whole physiology that's sounding an alarm for you. And not a, and I even hesitate to use the word alarm because there's connotations to it, but it's a signal. It's a signal to you to pay attention. Pay attention. Something is not right for you with the lens that you have built for yourself. Something is not aligned. And so we get to, okay, I feel my sensations, I feel the anxiety. Those are actually acts of love. Those aren't things to hurt you. They're there to literally be like, hey, love, it's something is off and it's not safe, and I'm trying to protect you. These sensations, these things that come up that we have been told forever are bad, are not bad. They're like wonderful. Well, wonderful. I guess that's also something we can discuss as far as word choice. They are your allies. They are these sensations and these signals that your body, your mind use to alert you when something doesn't feel safe for you. And that is a beautiful thing. And we get to change our relationship to these sensations, feelings, mind of thoughts.
And I just want to take it out of the theoretical slightly. So
Okay.
reasons to make your mind an ally. We haven't given you how to make your mind an ally. And that is, yeah, the reasons are an important part, because you need to understand the rationalization behind doing something before you'll actually do it. But what I really want to expand on is that those micro fractions of moments that you were just talking about, in terms of that sensation comes up and then. And I'm really specific now, and it's taken me a while to get specific for myself and for my clients on what you do when those sensations come up, because it isn't run into or run away from, it's allow first. And so if you're constantly trying to do one thing or other with those symptoms, you're constantly in a state of manipulation of them. So either you're going to minimize them, oh no, run away, terrible, shouldn't have that thought, shouldn't have that sensation, push down, move on, or you let it fly. I mean, we weren't going to talk about this, but we are like a day and a bit away from Will Smith like lamping Chris Rock at the Oscars. And genuinely, we had a conversation about it where it was like, we saw what happened to Will. We know Will's story because we watched the Oprah thing and we texted each other about it, and we know.
Yeah, and it's all about in his book. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's in that moment when that came up for him and he was sitting there in that audience, his nervous system, not Will Smith, the conscious human who's a complete person, but his nervous system made the choice to do the thing that he did. And that was letting it fly. So, and I'm not going to make this whole thing about Will Smith and what he quote unquote should have done or could have done and all that kind of stuff, but you will experience those moments. You listeners will experience those moments where there's that fraction of a second where you have the potential to quell, react, or respond. And so people say react or respond, and I always add the third of quell, because people think responding is just stop you reacting. And it's like, no, there's a third way. There is a middle way through all of this. And so I'm not going to use Will Smith as I was just about to say, if Will Smith had sat there and but we're not going to do that, because it's just, when you guys are listening to this is a bit beyond when it's relevant. But when those sensations come up, first instinct might be to quell, second instinct might be to run with it and just unleash it. And which way you go is dependent on your conditioning and where you've been as a kid and how safe it was to express and whether it was all of that kind of stuff. championed, and and also adult stuff, like whether you've been then entrained that you have a right to do stuff and therefore you can let it fly, and that empowerment stuff doesn't really matter. Either of those is even more unsafe for your own nervous system. And I'm really not interested in the other person in this, because we can't ever control other people. I'm really interested in the person to whom this is happening to. And the reason why I say don't quell and don't overly react, is because both of those perpetuate the indication that your nervous system got that it was unsafe, because you then create more unsafety, whether you're suppressing and repressing or unleashing merry hell, depending on whatever the instinct is. It's both of those realities are prolonging the unsafety. The one thing that doesn't prolong the unsafety is allowing the sensation to ripple through your being, allowing the thought process to cascade through your mind without gripping, without hanging on, without feeling, oh my God, what's the problem? I need to think about this. Or, oh my God, what's this? Oh my God, what's this pain? I need to deal with it. Just allow it to be. And really quickly, it will ripple itself out, particularly for the physiology. It will come, it will bubble, and it will almost go in like a cascade. Thoughts are slightly more difficult. So have a pen and paper, write stuff out of you. This circular brain thing, pretty useless without expression. It needs to get out. So write stuff out, allow the thing to bubble through first. This isn't instantly reframe. It isn't instantly go to look at, oh, why might I be feeling this in this situation? And because it's happening because your nervous system's unsafe. If you instantly go to, oh, what is the thing that might be making me unsafe in this situation? Any answer that you get is going to be completely useless, because you're still unsafe in the situation.
Right. You're still in trauma. Yeah.
You're still in that loop of not feeling good and whatever. So any thought that your brain comes up with is in the same energy map as the insert your thing here, anxiety or depression or anger or, frustration or bitterness. So don't do it from that perspective. Allow the sensations. If it feels deeply uncomfortable and it's a totally safe situation, get out the situation, walk away, and then allow the cascade to occur. And then when you're in a safer space, recognize what happened and do the work on it, do the thinking around it. So this isn't know that your mind is not you and therefore dismiss everything that it ever says. This isn't know that your mind is not you and therefore don't believe it when it does things. This isn't your mind is a really good signaler to you, so listen to it and jump into deep data mining as soon as something crops up. It's have the human experience and know that there's content in every single element of your human experience that's material for you to reflect on in the next moments.
So
I listened to this myself on Sunday night. I just want to say, I'm speaking about this with such clarity right now. And I swear to God, and I said to you on Monday, my brain, I could really have done with that in my noggin on Sunday night and Monday, when my brain was just soup and confusion. So we're not Lily White. We need our own advice.
Yeah. So give yourself an opportunity to regulate, and then you can do the redefining. So,
research. And I think people with all those 4R things miss research. You can't redefine just by talking it out. And that's the redefine thing. It's oh, it must mean this. It's no, research. What does it actually mean for you? Because we can sit on a podcast and say anxiety means this. And I can write PDFs and course content, and I am doing at this moment, saying, oh, this symptom in this organ means this, or it can suggest this. It's what does it mean for you? And I've written this example in the PDF that we're going to start giving away. It's if you injured your ankle as a child and it created a whole thing around it, you were off school for a bit and you got made fun of, or somebody the bullies signed your cast or whatever, your relationship to your ankle is going to be totally different as an adult to somebody who's never had any ankle problems. So if you get an ankle injury as an adult and you had that history, it means something different to you to somebody else who hasn't had that ankle history. And it's a really mundane explanation, but it's about exploring your relationship to these things as they come up. And so in that context, if your parents had anxiety, if somebody heaven forfend, but took their lives because they had mental health problems. Your relationship to mental health and those kind of labels is completely different. So you get to research yourself. I've said it before and I will say it again. Find yourself fascinating, because it's the only way that you can then redefine it in a way that sits in your brain and your nervous system as a truth, not a something somebody else has told you to think about this. Sorry, I didn't mean to just jump on that, but yeah.
No, that's good. I'm glad you did. And it's a major act of love for yourself,
Yeah.
Talked about loving yourself. It's like that's a major way, especially if you're looking to shift and transform parts of your life. You have to be willing to go in and know that you don't know everything.
Yeah.
And getting support and guidance, whether that be therapy, coach. And I would encourage everyone to have someone that's informed go on the journey with you, because having support through that journey, to have somebody reflect, be a mirror for you, like bounce ideas off of, to talk stuff out, is extremely, extremely important. Because you can read a million self-help books, but if you're not actionizing everything with others, then you're only able to do so much and only able to go so far.
Particularly if trauma's involved. And so, and we at Unveil believe that everybody has trauma. It just depends on the level and the nature and all that kind of stuff. So I don't mean all traumas necessarily. But if you're hoping to re-regulate yourself, and there's better words than that, but we'll use it because people will understand it. And you're reading all the books which tell you how to do it. And there are, I mean, I've got one here. I'm like rereading Peter Levine's In an Unspoken Voice at this moment in time. And it's literally the roadmap for, kind of healing traumatic imprints. But I've read this book and it doesn't heal my traumatic imprints, because my trauma itself will stop me from taking me to the place where I could recalibrate safety into my nervous system. So I don't attempt to do this stuff on my own, and it takes somebody with the skill that you need. So I mean, I'm sure we don't mind telling people, like before I left America, we were sitting there going, Brace couldn't hold what was coming up for me, and I needed to go and find somebody else, because it takes somebody who's massively skilled in this work to do this work. And these are specialisms, and we as Unveil coaches will refer out if we're not specialist in certain areas, because this is human beings we're talking about. And it isn't just go find someone to talk to and we're coaches, so we'd always recommend coaching, because we're not really coaches. We're not proactive like cheerleaders. We're healers. That's what we are. It's what we do. But we know how impossible it is to take yourself to the darkest places on your own most of the time. And I thought I could do it, genuinely thought I was really good at like taking myself into all of the shadows. And then we were sitting there in my little place in North Hollywood, and I was just like, legitimately, I can't do this one, can I? And it's like, and that doesn't mean anything about me. It's just you shouldn't ever have to go into the shadows on your own, right?
I think that's one of the beautiful things of being a human being. It's like we are designed to do these things together. And it's lovely when we get to do that, because when we try to do it on our own, 9 times out of 10, we either don't make it to where we want, or we get really beat up along the way or burn out. We're not designed to
the meanings for all those things as well. We had all the kind of like associations to those things. And we aren't designed to do it on our own. And I want to reiterate something I said very early on in our podcast series when we were talking about the course that we did together and how we met. It's like, I paid for people to do things with me because it meant that much to me. And there was no way I was going to do it otherwise, because I could be a little self-sufficient island in my own way and didn't need to deal with anything. But I wasn't happy. I needed my community. And so this isn't, we get to do it together and doesn't everyone have lots of lovely friends? Because we will have people listening to this who feel lonely and feel the pressure of being an isolated, human in a soup of people who don't understand them and don't speak the same language a lot of the time. And find the support, find the people who feel like the right shepherds.
I love the shepherds.
So when it comes to how to make your mind an ally, the rundown is, firstly, stop making it an enemy. Because
Yes.
you'll never get anywhere. Like, you'll just be locked in the tennis match that is you and your own psyche. The second is, in that moment of the sensations and the thoughts coming up, remember where it's coming from. Remember that it's a holistic experience that your being is going through, and that it's going through it because it thinks it needs to. There's a reason. And then allow that cascade, wherever it takes you, whatever it does. And don't try and force it. Don't think, oh, Victoria said it's going to go quickly, so come on. Like, just watch it. Let it be. Let it do its thing. And then research and understand why that might have been an unsafe reality for you. And then redefine and understand how to make it either more safe or allow yourself to move through the journey of redefining. And that we cannot give you on a podcast. We cannot show you personally how to redefine your nervous system and recalibrate and integrate those loops of stress, because it's so individual and it's so personal and it's really complicated. So that's the point at which you might need some support. You may not. Awareness is a magic button and it might do everything that you need. But if it feels like it's not going to, then that's when you might need to reach out for your personalized shepherd.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, everyone, we hope that this has brought some clarity, some peace, some compassion for yourself. And it isn't the end. Where you are does not have to be where you stay.
Love that.
And I'm sure there's so many of us out there who are like, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. Hopefully this gives you, like I was saying, a little bit more clarity about some of the possibilities that are out there. And yes, I'm continuing to say the same thing.
And I love it. And I think that, it can be very disheartening when, two coaches who charge for their services always come back to do coaching. But that's why we have this podcast. It's completely free. I don't think we're going to be like monetizing it anytime soon. And even if we are, you don't need to take any of the things that we monetize it with. This is completely free. It's completely, easy access information. That PDF that I was alluding to that I'm building is going to be free. There is an accompanying video which builds on all of this, which is also going to be free. We have our workshop coming up, which is on the 11th and 12th of June, which is a little bit on this theme, to be fair. It's like, who are you really? And are you really the product of your thoughts, or are you more than that? And are you really even the behaviors that you are and all the coping strategies? And we do go into why these coping strategies come up. It would be a much more kind of thorough exploration of the research part of what we've spoken about today. It's like that. How do you get into the bit of where it all comes from? That's like
actionizing. Yeah.
That's session 1 of a 2-day workshop. So like there's a lot else in that workshop, and that's all redefining the route to loving yourself. So there's that, and that's very low cost. And that you can go to unveilenterprises.com/workshop if you want to apply for that. And yes, if you've been on those pages a few times, we do keep redesigning them. Victoria does keep recreating them in the background. Then our course, I'm getting even more and more passionate about the online transformational healing retreat that we are launching also in June. And again, haven't quite got pages sorted for that yet, but that is a way that you can have us with you on the journey if working one-to-one with us is beyond your reach, means, or desire at this moment in time. And that, I don't know, I think it would be lovely to have us two, because we've recorded tons of videos and it's us two together, like not like this, guys. Like, we're literally standing next to each other. And I'm really tempted to put some of the outtakes in there. The PC one.
A lot of, well, I was going to say there's lots of expletives
Right.
expletives in there. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like me going, do you remember what attachment style you are, Brace? And you going, So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of humor. But genuinely, you get us, and you get
Anxious.
us. Are you? Yeah. Especially
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, right.
You get us walking you through, and like it's super supportive. And eventually that retreat will turn into a live led course with us. We're hoping. Not too far
Love
in
it.
So there's so much that you can access, and it's about finding the people you trust. And I think there's a lot of disillusionment at the moment with like all this stuff, and we have a battle ourselves. Like, how much do we play the game? We've said it before. It's like, how much do we play the game of getting our word out there? But if you find the leaders that you really resonate with, they're your tribe, they're your people. It doesn't matter if you don't know them. Just like, yeah, particularly people like us, send us messages on Instagram. People are very kind of reserved. Like, reach out to us. If you want to chat to Brace about anger, send him a message. Like, he's not elusive.
I would love that. I would love that.
Right. Same with me. If you want to talk about symbolism, symptoms, and all that jazz, and like how to, integrate this with that, just send us a message. And also, your questions give us material to help more people. So never think it's a dumb question. Never think you're pestering us. Never think it's a problem. Just reach out.
Emphasized. The little exclamation marks.
Right. Yes.
Perfect. All right, my friends, our family.
Unveilers.
Yes.
I'm gonna catch on. I'm determined.
Well, for now, my name is Brace Harris.
And my name's Victoria Fenton.
And we are
Unveil.
Stay informed with all things Unveil. Sign up for the newsletter at unveilenterprises.com/sign up.